if weren't able to join us last week, please be sure to watch that presentation. Let me share here. That presentation last week really walked folks through the mechanics of producing a podcast. So again, we looked at some stereotypes that folks had about doing, or actually the realities of doing a do-it-yourself sort of project like a podcast. The expectation, you want it to be really great. It was often very challenging, but that's not so much the case anymore. Someone like Mark Maron, who had started out doing things in his garage and infamously kept his setup in the garage, was able to make podcasts a mainstay nationwide. The way you record is very much dictated on who you want to be, the content you're presenting, and who your audience is. And that really also sets up our conversation for today in terms of promotion. So last week, and I'm just sort of going through these slides as a reminder, we were talking about the technicalities, those materials, tools, and approaches that are really necessary and really inform how you're going to create, capture your voice, and disseminate it out. And that's the actual content itself. So just sort of continuing on. And one of the things that we got to toward the end, not to make folks sick, but we're just going to skip down here. We talked about how you were going to, each one of you, the idea of what you would do in terms of your persona, how you would create your entire recording setup. And then we also talked about, even though in this fellowship, we're going to be sharing your pieces, through our platforms. Once you're done with us, you would then look at creating your a kind of a world for your podcast on something like Substack, where you can easily record a podcast, promote it, do an e-newsletter, and give it a home, if you will. So these slides have a great deal of information about Substack, and I highly encourage you to go back through these slides, and also in the recording. And then also in these slides, there is something called the test drive. And as I mentioned, we put together sort of a persona, an entire sort of vision and approach, in terms of equipment that you might use to do your podcasts. So be sure to come back to these slides and look. It was a little bit different and sometimes on the nose, just kind of depending on how folks, their creation process and how their ideas might have changed or evolved since they signed up and applied to the fellowship. So, and as we promised, when you create your podcast, that's almost the easy part. The next part is, getting it out there and getting folks' eyes and ears on it. So without further ado, let's get going. So this is kind of our persona here today, and our little podcaster that we're going to be following is this cat. So um and the title of this is about publish, promote, engage, and then repeat. So it's very cyclical, and the work around promotion, when it's done, it's never done. So we're going to be looking again and revisiting not just what we did last week, so we just accomplished, but we're going to be looking again at what the framework that Sam shared with us and what he did when he was in the fellowship. And then we're going to look at kind of the anchors of design. And even though it's primarily focused on the logo and everything, these lessons are like transfer through in like all podcasts, all promotional creation and the like. We're going to talk about cover art. We're going to talk about different types of promotions like quote graphics and the like. we're going to then do an activity around with deep dives on the different types of social media platforms that are out there. We're going to talk about aggregators that help make our lives a lot easier when it comes to promotion. We're going to talk about audiograms / video clips, and this is going to be really important in getting that promotion out there. And then we're going to close up with a little discussion about SEO, and then a little callback to what we learned earlier. So without further ado, let's revisit what Sam was teaching us. So did everybody have a chance to go through Sam's slides? So if not, that's okay. We're going to look at them here. Just, he did this kind of, 4 or 5 step procedure, 5 steps at a time around promotion. And I thought this was really great the way he broke it down. Truly, Sam, one of the most innovative fellows and just people that we've ever really had a chance to work with. So he really thought about it in terms of making your thoughts visible, and kind of creating this, making your mission and vision, reifying that in the creative space. So he talked about himself, his goals for the fellowship, and then his takeaways. And he really wanted you all to be very, very strategic in your approach. And really, when you were thinking about your idea for your podcast, kind of looking at the landscape of how your ideas are currently being visualized. And a lot of times when it comes to public health, folks are very literal. And let's just say public health folks are not often graphic designers. So I have a background in for a long time, and my way of public health was I had a career in communications, and I was a director of communications at a nonprofit. And basically, it was like I ran away to join the science circus. I left my career behind and wanted to do research. And I found that people did not know how to truly translate and visualize their work at all. And it could be very difficult for laypersons in particular to understand what they were talking about. So this is also one of those things that will, as you promote your, learn how to promote and create promotions for your podcast, it's also, has some spillover effects. So with that, he really wanted folks to look at doing a mission statement, just a really 1 minute kind of capturing, our mission statement for BCPH is democratizing public health, period, boom. And we look at it, in terms of our vision, supporting new and emerging thought leaders who are addressing health through the lenses of justice and equity. So, and that's something you need to think about when it comes to your podcast as well. What is your mission? Why are you doing what you're doing? And that really will capture literally the vision, the creativity, the visuals, the audio, everything that you use to that end. So with that, he talked about, making sure you understand your audience and making sure it's well defined. And then also with that, thinking about potential partners. These are the people you want to interview. These are people who are not exactly doing what you're doing because you're carving out that really original space, right? However, they're in the same grocery store as you. They're in the same neighborhood, right? They're your friends, and sometimes they're your competitors, but that doesn't mean you can't both hold each other up and help advance your work, and sometimes those synergies can come in the most unusual places. So for instance, if you know Green, who is a YouTuber, podcaster, educator, he and his brother have a nonprofit company, and one of the things they do is they have a podcast to promote their work, and they interview people you wouldn't think would have any synergy with academic or intellectual things, because he talks about health and science and the like. But he's gone on shows where he's talked to people who are are cooks, who are chefs, and they talk about the science of cooking and access to food and the like. And it's just very fascinating. And this is the type of thinking that will help you really make a mark and further your podcasts. So, and then with that, when I talk about things never being done, often what I recommend, and Sam did this here, and I talked about it when he started, they started this program as well, which is when you create your content, let's say your promotions, start with a big piece first. So, if you have your video, edit your video, your interview and everything, get it cut the way you want, then create like large snippets for your YouTube, TikTok, take screenshots, images, everything to create the smaller pieces. So what starts out large, as a video, as a blog, that's like your e-newsletter and everything to promote it, gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you get like to your X and your Blue Sky, which is like 250 characters. And what that's going to do is it creates that cycle, right? So you started out here, you take folks to your content, your folks are going to like your content, and they're going to go back to your social media to learn more about your content. They're going to share it with others, and then you're going to bring more and more people into this recycle, repurposed loop. And he talks about that here. And then he shares his process as well. So we won't go through that. But I thought it was important to review his slides just in case folks didn't have a chance to review them before we met up today. And this kind of sums it up again here in terms of that existing images, thinking of the mission, intended audience, potential partners, repurposing. And in many ways, this is a cyclical loop as well, because every time you come up with an idea for a podcast, when you come up with an idea of how you're going to do it, that technical piece we talked about last week, you're going to want to think about how that topic exists in the zeitgeist, in the literature, as images online. Does it sit with your mission and your vision? If it doesn't, then don't. Maybe it's not something you should do, or you should take a different tack to it. Think about your audience needs and desires around it, partners, and then how you're going to promote the final product, and then back again. And these slides do provide just a little bit of an overview again about what Sam was doing. And here we're going to do just a 5-minute sort of activity. We're going to, just sort of write down Sam's activities here, just really quickly, or just share out. So let's take 2 or 3 minutes. Think about about your mission statement, your intended audience, your potential partners, and how you plan on like repurposing. And this probably won't be as detailed just yet because we haven't gone through this entire process. But let's just take 1 or 2 minutes, think about that, and then we'll share out when we come back, okay? Okay, and I'm going to leave this slide up. It has all the information you need. Also, if I am going rapid fire to get this information out. So if you have any questions, just be like, hey, stop, Dr. Cersei, because I need you to stop. So just let me know. Okay, so now that we've had a little bit of time, does someone want to go first in terms of sharing their mission, intended audience, potential partners, and taking a stab at the repurposing piece? Maybe Josephina, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'm still working on mine a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But
Do folks need like one more minute? Because I just kind of
yes, please.
okay. Let's do one more minute. All right, all right.
Okay, thank you.
We'll come back. We'll come back at 2:45. We got about a minute to go. Okay, everybody. Um, let's regroup here and sorry if I jumped in a little too soon last time. Josephina, do you feel a little more ready to share?
Yes, and no worries. I did go through these when I was going through Sam's presentation, but as I was looking at it, I was like, oh, I want to kind of like revise it a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so my mission statement, I said share um, community-led mental health solutions in public conversations that highlight lived experience and community expertise and help change how we understand mental health care system. And then my intended audience. Um, I kind of was describing like a few, but as it says here, tried to like focus on one of them. So I said, a health organization leader who's interested in behavioral health equity, but um, maybe not sure how to kind of design programs beyond traditional systems of care. So maybe they're listening as they're going to work or throughout the day to look for practical models and community perspectives. And then for some of the potential partners, I outlined some specific examples in different categories, so including like public health organizations, and I have a couple that I was thinking about in Boston, And then community partners. Again, I have a couple that are specific to Boston as well as some that are national. And then some ideas in like public health communications. And then for repurposing, I listed some videos, so maybe like 30 to a second to like a minute clips from with like some key quotes, and then maybe some um posts again with like key lessons. Like I like in Instagram, for example, when people create the like kind of slideshow posts where they have like different
Mhm.
key takeaways, and then a newsletter reflection with key takeaways from the discussion as well.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And I like the idea, I think one of the things I really like is that, and what you pointed out was, you do this process once, right? You did it with Sam when you were, did it with Sam as you were first viewing probably the video and the slides, right? And then
Mhm.
revisiting it now, and you'll revisit it again. And but you've already been thinking through. So thank you very much for sharing. Dr. Pilla, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone. Sure, I'll go next. I think
Yay.
this experiment highlighted something that I wrote in my what's the value prop? It wasn't the value proposition. It was during the that initial survey we did. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the questions was, where do you think you're gonna trip up, or maybe like what's your concern? And I just hit that part. So let me talk a little bit about what I wrote here. So as far as my
Okay.
mission statement, um translate health system inefficiencies and how they impact real people. My four is public health professionals or leaders, policymakers, primary care clinicians. And so I think I think the response I wrote was that I was going to have a hard time narrowing down my audience. So I want to talk this through with everybody and get a little bit of help. So then,
Yeah.
my intended audience, this is where I'm tripping up. Who's my specific listener? I kind of started writing a whole bunch of sentences, but I think who my specific listener might be is a public health leader or public health professional, maybe a public health organization. I'm thinking American Diabetes Association,
Mm-hmm.
others alike. That's also a potential partner. But looking for practical solutions to remove barriers, excuse me, for patients accessing chronic care. So, um, I feel like people who are typically looking for these kinds of like practical solutions might be driving while going to work, but I don't know when else. I guess I have to think about when I listen to podcasts and kind of I guess frame my how I access these types of topics. What might that person look like trying to access mine? Um, and so yeah, so that I think that's the part where I'm kind of maybe overthinking it or whatnot, or maybe I think I need to be more specific as to who my listener is. Um, in addition, step three, potential partners. I mentioned the ADA, but there are a few folks in pharmacy space. I have one person in mind that she's coined like the public health pharmacist, and I want to reach out to her in this capacity and kind of see you know, what conversation we can have around this topic. But she's one that came to mind, and I kind of paused there because all the other stuff kind of tripped me up. So let me slow down. I did not get to repurposing. Not
So
there yet.
that's quite all right. You I really feel like with like the things you're raising and just being very honest about like, oh, there might be some questions around this. This is what this
Hmm.
process is for. And as I was saying with before when after Josephina presented, it's just you're going to be doing it again and again. And it may
Right.
evolve and change over time, right?
That's a good point. Okay.
So I mentioned Hank Green before. I don't know if you've ever heard of him and his brother, but they started out as like more of a fun commercial venture, and it's evolved into this educational nonprofit. And he said, in 1,000 years, if you ever thought I was going to be doing something like this, I no.
That makes
Oh,
sense. And I think
that's
you raised a good point too. I'm so sorry, Dr. Cersei.
oh no, 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 please.
That I want to go and do it because I didn't get to this part of Sam's video yet. So I wonder if, just like Josephina, this is her second time around, kind of giving it a second
Mhm.
look through. I think that might help, or a third look through. Like you said, it's cyclical, but I think I'll feel more comfortable on the next iteration of this activity.
Definitely, definitely. And it's, one of those like 1,000 hours practice things. The other thing is
Mm.
we're going to be going through the different social media platforms, and they all have like a different purpose and different audiences they reach. And that'll help with
Mm.
the repurposing process as well. Like what is really going to give you the bang for the time when it comes to creating promotions, are your users on X? I would say that probably when we first started BCPH, when we first started the Harvard Public Health Review, which became BCPH Review, X was like still very much a space that was used by nonprofit people. The CDC used to do all kinds of town halls, and they would invite me. I had like a cat account that talked about HIV, and they would invite my cat to
Oh,
be part of this town hall. And I would dare say no one would do that now,
that's so
now that it's
cool.
X, right? Because these things change over time too. So
That's
not only
correct.
does your
Yeah.
approach, but the zeitgeist, the world of these things will change. But I want to give space for Abiola for your work. Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey.
Hello, everyone. So, for the mission statement, like I titled the podcast, is going to be Let's Talk EHS. So, it exists to promote safer, healthier, and more human-centered workplaces by exploring the intersection of environmental health and safety, public health, technology, and organizational systems. So, through conversation, storytelling, expert insights, and real world experiences, the podcast will aim to challenge traditional approaches to safety by emphasizing worker well being, prevention, mental health, and the human factors that shape workplace outcomes. That's the mission. And for the target audience, I'm looking at environmental health and safety professionals, looking at occupational health and safety practitioners, looking at public health professionals and students, looking at workplace leaders and organizational decision makers. I'm also looking at labor advocates and policy makers. I'm looking at workers interested in health, safety, and well being, and then individuals interested in workplace culture, human centered systems, and the future of safety and technology. Then, for repurposing ideas, I have a couple of them. So, I am looking at short form video clips for TikTok, Instagram Reels, LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
YouTube Shorts. And I'm also looking at audiograms where I feature impactful quotes or key insight from the episodes. Then I
Mhm.
can have what I call quote cards and carousel posts for LinkedIn and, of course, Instagram. Then I can have the behind the scenes content from the podcast
Mm.
and the interviews too. Then blog posts. So I'm looking at, since I already write for occupation Canadian Occupational Safety, which is a very big blog, very big online media outlet. So I'm looking at one of my stories. I can put an external link or hyperlink to my podcast. I can mention it in the blog. I'm also looking at that and see how that can reach greater audience, and looking at infographics that will summarize statistics, frameworks, or safety concepts discussed in the episodes. Then I'm also looking at using the Vox Pop that I'm going to be including in the podcast. I'll be using the Vox Pop clips featuring public opinions on workplace health and safety issues. I am still trying to see if I'm going to use email newsletter, but not yet because I know many people
Yeah.
do that, and I'm not sure I like popular demand. Then I'm also looking at the audio only podcast distribution on Spotify. Then,
Hmm.
if it's possible, have a live webinar discussions or panel sessions connected to the podcast topics. Then I'm also looking at cross promotion with EHS organizations, public health groups,
Mhm.
and professional networks. And finally, I'm also thinking of having a separate documentary style mini clips that we highlight real workplace experiences and human centered safety stories. So these are a few of the ideas I'm trying to bring up for the repurposing.
That you've been really thinking about this quite often, and it's very detailed. And I love the fact that you've already tapped into ways to leverage your content beyond, beyond the session. So having the behind the scenes, having those outtakes, little documentary style clips, those, they drive engagement with your platform. They also drive engagement with your specific content. And there are folks who are just really big fans of that content on its own. So I think one of the interesting things I like to do is take lessons from those who work more in the entertainment space. There are folks who do really good like public health podcasts, and maybe they're not as so good as promoting it, but there are folks who have developed like these independent studios that center around like YouTube, for instance. And one of them is called Watcher, and Watcher, you know, was established, and then soon after COVID hit them, and they had to pivot, greatly in terms of like their content they were putting out, but they also really grabbed onto that behind the scenes, because one of the things the behind the scenes content really can do is folks create like a relationship with you as the creator. So, a very healthy, relationship with you as a creator in terms of a parasocial relationship. And it also deepens their trust in your content. So they get to know your process, they get to know like how you engage with your guests, with the content. And you can speak to them too in like additional clips that aren't the interviews, that aren't the formal sort of investigations, if you will, where you talk to them about what's happening, the next things you're going to be doing, because it's like a friendly update, right? So that's like another layer to all this, and you were already kind of getting under the surface. So great work, guys. That was a lot, and it's like right off the bat, like just dive in. We've been I've been talking 5 minutes, and it's like let's do an activity. So this, all of this, the mission, the intended audience, your potential partners, how you're going to repurpose, all of that is going to really inform how you are going to promote, right? Because pressing that publish button does nothing to really get that word out. So, and that really can undermine the future. Oh, I'm sorry. Abiola,
Yes, just
yeah.
wanted to chip in a little bit, something that
Yeah.
can be a challenge, you know, which I've been thinking of, and I just want to put it out there if there are ideas that can help me
Yeah.
figure it out. Uh, I'm creating a new content, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure my present state Instagram is fit for that content. So I'm looking at creating a new Instagram page that will be solely for this
Mm-hmm.
content, because I have other content, family, friends, my personal life on Instagram. So
Yeah.
trying to now bring this new content, it may be counterproductive, so to say. So I am just thinking in my head, maybe I'll have to create a new Instagram page, then start having to get more followers on the Instagram and all of that. So I don't know if there is a better way to do that. I just want to put it out there if there could be somebody maybe inspired to give us a grand solution to that.
So I think everyone, it looks like Dr. Phil has the same issue. Like for instance, personally, I have my own TikTok, that I use just to go on that platform. And if I want to like peruse different videos, um, and, also like, I don't want to interact with videos that I personally might like by being logged in as BCPH, right? Because those are different audiences, if you will, like you were saying, friends, family. And you want to keep those worlds pretty separate, keep them separated. I guess, Dr. Pale, you said you had the same issue, and I was just wondering, perhaps you wanted to weigh in.
So I was typing some things, but I was gonna say the same thing. I wanted to keep it separate and kind of start fresh because I feel like my own personal social media, I kind of have my own thoughts around that and my own
Mhm.
difficulties with not being a poster. And so that kind of comes with just stuff. And I'm like, I want to set that aside because that the personal me is not a poster and someone who likes to showcase a lot, but this persona of the podcast and this like separate entity, I'm in a different mindset there. I have to be, oh, sorry, I think I hit my mic. I have to post, I have to promote. So that's going to be a fresh start for me with this new mindset of this is what your persona is doing, not what Paola likes or does. So it's kind of interesting
Mhm.
because it's two separate kind of contradicting views where personally I'm kind of like I haven't posted since 2021. Right? But as
Mhm.
a new promoting this new content, I'm gonna have to be on top of it and so I like the idea of keeping it separate at Viola and kind of starting fresh with like new energy
Yeah.
and whatever.
Yeah. Because it is your price, your persona, right?
Mhm.
And it's as opposed to you as an individual. The other thing that it can do, and I'm going to ask Josephina as well in a moment. The other thing it can do by having things separated is it protects you as the individual. I'm just thinking of last February, uh, Boston Congress of Public Health had a TikTok that went viral, and it was about transgender joy, and we had about almost 700,000 people see it and engage with it. And at first, it went to like all of the, lovely, trans youth who use TikTok, a lot of health professionals. And then suddenly, because it's TikTok, it was being interacted with, and so it went over to the wrong side of TikTok. And we got lots and lots of really fun threats, and horrible comments that never bear repeating. So if that had been like on like my individual page, they would have been able to dox me or, and the like. So there's that bit of separation from you and the audience that you want to have, because people do feel a great deal of connection with those that they meet online. That's a little bit unusual, and that there's lots of papers being written about it. But Josephina, did you want to add anything? So
Yeah, I also am not personally a huge social media person. But yeah, I like and appreciated the kind of um way you synthesized how you were viewing each of our podcasts and platforms last week. Like I thought that was really helpful. And um yeah, and then thinking about Paula's or Dr. P's comments about and reflections on like almost like a persona. I think that's helpful for me to think about. Um, yeah, really like curating a public platform of sorts. Because as Sam was like emphasizing in um his presentation, like thought leadership does need to be visible and out there. And so yeah, I'm just kind of reflecting on that piece and curating that like public aspect of my work.
fabulous. So these are all like this is a really good discussion. And I appreciate how thoughtful you've been in like addressing, and thinking about like your persona, and how you would manifest it online and the best approaches to it. And I know that, personally, I'm not a big poster on social media. I remember when Facebook started, it was kind of fun, but corporate interests have made sure that's not the case anymore. Um, so it's anything but fun. But when it comes to publishing, it's not the same as promotion. You have like a second before folks go on to the next greatest and latest thing. But just having a post, 5 times more reach, that's a no-brainer when it comes to this. The other thing is it's going to help you, beat the odds when it comes to longevity. I mean, here, 95% of podcasts, fewer than 10 episodes. We want you to have 6 seasons and a movie, as they say. um, so this is when it comes to like creating a brand, creating a vision for your podcast, there's 4 different anchors, right? So when you think of like a podcast, when you think of a YouTube channel, anything, you think first of their sort of visual identity, at least I do. But when it comes to even VCPH, like I raised my hand. Dr. Candace calls it our buckyball, this little thing back here. That's kind of us, right? Folk kind of associated with us. The thought leadership program, this has this little light bulb and some other images associated with it. And then, obviously larger brands too have their brand marks and the like. Coca-Cola, that Watcher Studio I mentioned, they have a visual. Also with that, there's distinct colors associated. So let's say like Coca-Cola, they're red, right? As opposed to Pepsi, which is blue. We have this blue palette, it not only is like the shape of it, but that visual piece of it. The other thing here, we have it as voice, but when you have your podcast and you're doing your podcast, and even like if you only want to do like that audio piece, there's something with your brand mark that's called a stinger, and it's like a sound associated with you. So a lot of our videos, we have this like little, like it's associated with the Boston Congress brand. A lot of other podcasts will have it like a little chime. It's a very little thing, but it helps like ingrain in your audience, like, okay, it's time for Abiola's podcast. It's time for Josephina, Dr. P. And they're going to be talking about X. Like it kind of trains them about the content. Other little things, your font, even how it's displayed. I know that sounds odd, but whether or not you're using a serif font or a more commercially viable font like a sans serif font really means a lot to your audience. And then your voice. What 3 adjectives describe how your show sounds, how it feels? Is it detached and impersonal? Facts only, that's it? Are you warm? Are you effusive? Are you hard hitting? Are you political? Are you angry? Are you giving voice to that anger? How are you doing that, making that productive? I've seen some channels out there, not necessarily podcasts, but where someone comes on and they literally just scream about what's going on in the news in terms of its relationship to health. And it, you don't want to watch it every day. It's kind of exhausting, but it can be cathartic. So what are you trying to accomplish visually and communicate what your space is on the internet? So and then here's just this little quick check. It's about like, if you can't say all 4 about your podcast in a sentence, you're going to have some trouble going down the line in terms of promotion and the like. And also just, it might be meaning like, as Dr. P was saying, and Dr. Josephina was saying, you might have to do more of that iterative process around creating what you want to do. And I'm sure like Abiola, you were talking about, doing these little documentary pieces behind the scenes and the like. I assume that's probably because you've seen other people doing it and its power and how much you resonated with it and wanted to like replicate that. Am I right? Or
Yes, you're very correct.
great. So yeah, so this is an interesting process when it comes to design, when it comes to doing a website and the like. Sometimes you don't even go so much with the content or the exact visuals you want to use. You start with what's the mood board. I don't know if you ever had a chance to do a mood board. Could be pretty wild and fun. Like you go through online, you find pictures that kind of speak to what you want to communicate. And you also come up with like the color story, if you will. So that can start with like looking at what other people doing and like stealing their colors, looking at inspirational images, inspirational sort of content and how it makes you feel. So here the path one is like stealing the content. You know, you can go on here and like generate colors that kind of lock in. One of the things to think about here is you can see these are contrasting colors. So you have like the dark, very robust color going with something a bit lighter. This is unusual. This is probably because the black is like the absence of color and then with the yellow like or gold, like that kind of complements. And really, you can probably use this color with anything to create that sort of dramatic compilation there or contrast. And then number 3 here in creating things with us for like right now, you can look at how we have it. We have our hex codes and everything in terms of our brand colors, and you can use those to kind of bounce off if you're thinking like, oh, you don't want to clash. Folks have done things where they don't exactly match with us, and that's worked out well because these colors kind of can blend in as needed. So, but you can see like how we have our brand identity set up. If you are interested in, or like a little concerned about how to do it yourself. And then certainly there's examples online. So when you are creating your colors, doing your mood board, be sure you do the colors side by side on the screen, like photograph it, just kind of get that idea of what it's going to look like. You know, here the idea is around desaturating it. You know, this also speaks to what's something called Section 508, which is, you know, accessibility, those who have maybe some visual impairment, you know, making sure that there's some sort of contrast so that folks can more readily see what you are promoting. And then as we're going to note going further down, you're going to want to be able to communicate at this size as opposed to this size. So I noticed that I noted before we have fonts. You don't want to go down a rabbit hole as it says here, but this is a serif font. You can see it has these little like little curly cues and the like. It often communicates something a bit fussier, something a bit more academic, and that may actually fit with what you're trying to communicate. The commercial world tends to use fonts like this. This is a sans serif font. It's just a little like easier to read. On print, weirdly, this font is easier to read, but you can see when you look at it large on a screen, it does stop the eye, which is good, but it can be hard for the eye to move over it compared to this. Also, when it comes to having titles and content, having this contrast really helps the eye as well, differentiate that, okay, here's my section head, and then here's my supporting content. You don't want to do any more than like 3 fonts on a screen, because then it just starts looking like something went wild. So keeping things clean, keeping things neat, that'll keep your reader engaged. Keeping things differentiated in a very conscientious, strategic fashion, it's also going to do yourself a favor. So I have here in the slides some sample fonts that really will help you out. I always suggest that you use Google Fonts. Those are, you know, those fonts are freely available. They're going to work and play well with all of your programs that you use. and folks know them. You don't want to use like weird like slanty fonts that folks can't read, because oh my goodness, that's very off-putting. So so the first thing is like, here's a 1-minute moment. Do folks know of any podcasts or even like online studios, video producers, content that you know and will recognize anywhere just by the visual alone? So I don't know if Abiola or Josephina, Dr. P, if you have any that come to mind. So I have some examples here.
A color came to mind with oh my gosh, Mel Robbins. I think I
Okay.
associate I can't remember, is hers yellow as well, like Amy Poehler? I'm gonna pop into my podcast app, but I do associate a particular color with her content, and I'm like, oh, I already know I'm gonna learn something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will say that. And then the one I've been kind of watching a little bit more recently, it's more entertainment, but Kiki Palmer's podcast has like the
Oh
bright
yeah.
pink, and like
Mhm.
I already know it's going to be a good time when I see that, her letters and her color. So yeah, so you make a great point that those are ways for the audience to connect and kind of remember you by. It works.
It does. It does. It does. Does anybody else have any examples?
I was thinking about a couple different like NPR podcasts I listen to, and I think they all have different main kind of covers, but they have like that iconic, just like the NPR logo with like the three letters somewhere on the cover. So even though they're like
Mhm.
different, like almost sub or podcasts with like their own brand identity, they have that like
Mhm.
cohesive element. And
Excellent.
then
Yeah.
I think I forget if I mentioned this last week, but like Good Hang with Amy Poehler. I feel like
Yeah.
her cover I recognize because like she herself is on it. So
Mhm.
and she has like a few different colors, I think, but her own pictures, like since she's the kind of main like element of her own podcast, like her own photograph is the main piece.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. You both of you bring up some really good points. So Abiola, I didn't know if you had any you wanted to offer.
Um, yes, what we're talking about is not actually, it's not new, but it's something that I've not really paid attention to, and this is you bringing it back to my mind that it is very important. So the one that comes to mind is the Daily podcast, the one done by I think New York Times. Yes,
Mhm.
it's like a news podcast. So they do in-depth reporting and narrative journalism, on the day's most important stories. So I think I when you mentioned the font, the color, and all of that, they came to mind actually. So, and I think
Mm.
I'll also put that in my mind while designing this whole thing. It wasn't in my plan before until you mentioned, and thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, similar to you, I think of the New York Times. And the other one is for me personally is when I come across the orange podcast color and the image for Al Jazeera. Like I know right away I'm going to get the news unfiltered or from a different vantage, and buckle up. So, and then some other examples here. A Good Hang, Public Health and Holland, stay tuned. And so this brings us to our next activity. We don't have a lot of time just because of issues on my part. But let's just take 3 minutes. We're going to do a steal this look tear down. So these are our different podcasts that we're going to look at. Let's just pick one of the six. And you don't have to type the number in the chat because there's just the three of us today. And we're going to pick one, and then we're going to look at it, just look at the podcast, its visual identity and everything. Just write 30 seconds. Don't write anything down. Just look at it, kind of inspect its web page and everything. And then you're going to write about, or just like make some notes about its 3 moves, like its color, its font, and its element. And then we're not going to have time for breakouts, but we'll come back and share. So let's take like 4 minutes and do this approach, and then think about it in terms of like what you envision doing if you haven't done it already. So, and I know like the big thing right now is that first piece where you're going to be recording the introduction, like, who am I? What is this podcast about? Like, yeah. So it's pretty timely. Well, so I'm gonna go off screen. You guys take. I'll shut up. Don't take 5. We're gonna come back together at 3:28. Okay, everybody. Let's come back. So thinking about our creative process and creating our promotions, it's always good to look at, what other folks are doing for inspiration and reinterpretation. So yeah, Dr. P, you're like first up on my screen here, not to pick
Sure.
on you, but
No, it's okay. I was about to
yeah.
raise my hand.
Well, so that's great. That's great. So like
Yeah.
walk us through the steal this look,
Yeah.
tear down.
Okay, and I hope I did this correctly, but
Oh,
what I
there's
did in
nothing.
the last 4 minutes was that I chose the public health on call look, and then I went on my podcast app on my phone, and I also did a quick Google search and went on the podcast website, and I kind of got a sense of the colors, the font, where they house their podcasts, and I kind of just wrote down how I felt. And so the first thing I looked at was the color. So you mentioned three things: color, font, and then the element. So the color is this. I know on this page here it's like a burgundy red with white lettering, but when I went on their website and I went on the app, it's actually this bold orange color with a little mix of yellow, kind of looks like the sunrise sunset, with white letters, and it's very bright. It has these little sound bars, which kind of made me a little bit excited about hearing public health news, almost like, oh, I'm tuning in on like the latest headline and what that means. The other thing that excited me about like that color palette was that in their words, they wrote that they're future focused. Like, how can you use this news and kind of like prepare for the future in a sense? I'll read the actual tagline. So, um, evidence and experts to help you understand today's public health news and what it means for tomorrow. And so that future thinking kind of excited me. Oh, you have it up. Thank you. As I'm narrating. I love that. So yeah, so that orange, that white, it made me really excited. And I think maybe that's the kind of thing I want to do for folks is, oh, I'm tuning in because she's going to be talking about something that's obviously like systems issues are a serious thing because it affects real people and their outcomes. But I want people to feel positive and excited to come and listen and kind of talk through solutions and ways that we can improve that for folks. So I felt that my personality resonated a lot with that color scheme. And then the font itself, what website are you on? I think it's a little bit further up, but it's like this navy blue against this white background that kind of caught my attention. And it's a mix of fonts that are all easy to read. And I don't know, that blue against the white was very like, it commanded my attention. I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. So the overall element that I felt, I keep knocking my mic, I'm so sorry. The overall element that I felt is that these folks, they're an authority in the public health news space or in like the public health headline space. So I would want to go to them first if there's something new that came out, some new headline or something. So that was my assessment. I'm not sure if I did the activity correctly.
I feel like redo these activities in order for you to get something out of it. It sounds like you really did, and this is what I thought folks would do. So yeah, you did
Okay.
great.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. So Abiola, you're next on my screen. Do you feel good about going or?
Yes, I went through the On Purpose podcast, the one by Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
Yes, and I had to now pay attention to the colors because that's what we're talking about. Those things never mattered to me. I just
Mhm.
wanted to hear what you have to say and be sure that you can get me glued to my screen in the first 2 minutes. If you're unable to do that, then I switch to the next channel. But now that we're talking about colors, fonts, I'm beginning to, pay attention to those. So I looked at the color and I see that it's like they include soft cream and black
Mhm.
typography, and then the occasional muted gold or bronze accents, I guess, that they put around it. So I'm thinking because of the title of the podcast and the person hosting the podcast, they are looking at what gives calmness, what gives trust, warmth,
Mhm.
and of course, at the same time, putting in sophistication. Then also a bit of spirituality without feeling overly hippie. So then the font size, I think the one they are using, maybe they chose it for elegance and authority. And I can see it's a modern serif font, and there is
Mhm.
also sans serif element too, which is of course for readability, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So them playing around the fonts, they are not using techie font, they are not using playful font, they are not also using over spiritual handwritten written font. So I'm guessing that, looking at who Jay Shetty is, he tries to position, not that he tries, he positions himself between monk wisdom branding, then
Mhm.
also celebrity interviewer branding, and also corporate self-help branding. So I'm sure the font is in between all of those. It's not
Yeah.
too techy, it's not playful, it's not overly spiritual. But
Mhm.
the only thing I figured out, because I checked it on other platforms too, YouTube, Spotify, and also checked the website. I feel like a lot of modern wellness brand, they use a different color, which is not this. And I think that it's there's a kind of noise that it's bringing too, which can be distracting in a way. So
Mhm.
I feel like the design is good anyways, because it aligns perfectly with the message. And
Yeah.
yes, you can't. One thing I also want to believe with doing branding, you can't satisfy everybody. Humans' needs are insatiable. So, but what could be stronger? I feel like it lacks a distinctive visual identity. I want to, without missing the name of the podcast, without missing the name of the host, just looking at the color and the font, I should be able to guess that I think this is Jay Shetty's podcast. You know,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah, you
that's
could,
what I
yeah.
think I will integrate into mine, give it an identity, position it such that without the name, without the host, just looking at the color and the font, one should be able to depict that. Oh, I think this is Let's Talk EHS podcast.
Great, great. No, this was a very interesting one to pick. Dr. P, you have a
I
question?
wanna I wanna add something to what Aviola said. If you go back to the YouTube tab, Dr. Cersei,
Mhm.
it's so interesting because you mentioned the softer kind of green palette, which I think in some of the slides it kind of brings that calm, trust, and that
Mhm.
wisdom type of feeling. But if you scroll down to like the actual clips of, I forget what that those little boxes are called with the video, it's this
The
white.
thumbnails.
Thank you, the thumbnails. It's this white, bright, bold, yellow, black. It's very capture your attention, which to me is like the complete opposite of what the overall image of Jay Shetty is in the website, but I feel like it really works because people they tune in, like you said, Abiola, through like that headline, that like that one visual thing that's going to bring someone in. And I think he does both so nicely. I feel like a lot of podcasts use this like bold and yellow or
Mhm.
bold white red kind of look to almost like the warning sign or like the advisory sign kind of like zeroes in. So it works. And I like that
Mm.
I got to see that mixture of to me, what seems two very kind of contradicting feelings, right? So yeah, I just wanted to
And
point that out.
You're very
you
correct,
really,
Dr. P. I feel like, from what you have said too, and what I've been thinking, one has to be flexible too. You don't have to be
Mm,
rigid. That
good
uh,
point.
this is my branding, this is my color.
Hmm.
I am not going to change that. You just have to be flexible. I know that looking at the headline, it is calm, but from each of the clips is using something that can get people's attention, which is like shouting
Right.
at me, "Come on, open me."
Exactly.
Open me. So you need something to get them to see the calm and the trust you are trying to introduce. So if you have to
Mhm.
go the other way around by being rugged,
Mhm.
just to get their attention to see what you have to offer, one should be able to be, one should be flexible enough,
to play around all of these things, because it's also more psychological too than just producing content. You have to also apply psychology. What can I do to get people to click on this thing before I can introduce what I have to introduce? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. And I love that piece of the psychology of it. Like we're really thinking from such a far away sort of bird's eye view. And I love those deep conversations about, well, what will capture someone? What's the psychology behind this? So this is really fun. Thank you. This is a great
Yeah.
activity.
This is it is and I'm glad that you shared this one because it really brings up kind of the differences between how you promote across different platforms. So your website truly is your brand home in many ways. Folks they've already bought in when they're going to go visit, right? So this is very soft, as Aviola was pointing out, the soft green and everything really communicates like that health and wellness piece that he tries to not tries, he does very well in like communicating. These bright, what you notice very astutely, this is very much like YouTube. I want to stop your feed. I want to stop your eyes from moving on and watch this now. It has some very grabby title. It has these grabby colors. It speaks to the green, but is not green, obviously. The other thing is like, depending on how old these thumbnails are, like the algorithm for YouTube and to a lesser extent TikTok changes over time. Do you notice like his mouth, sometimes their mouths are open? That's by design. It's like sometimes when you go on YouTube, depending on the age demographic they're going after, they'll be like, or oh,
Oh,
and weirdly, having the mouth open makes people more likely to click. I think that's strange, but yeah. So
yeah.
if you look at some of his older clips, I noticed they had more of the
Like in
here.
mid-conversation, it looks very
Yeah,
engaging.
see, like this one's from 3 years ago. This daily hack to heal yourself, and their mouths are open. It's just these like fun little things that'll
Mhm.
come up more and more as you refine this. So we're very much at the early stage. But I want to ask Josephina, like, what are your thoughts? What were you looking at?
Yeah, this is also really interesting because I love like kind of art and design, but I haven't yeah, like created a whole kind of brand. So it's really interesting to look at. I looked at the Diary of a CEO um one just because I've seen a couple of clips from that one and it seemed interesting. And the colors were definitely created a pretty like serious feel. There's like a lot of black, and then there's like a kind of um either like red on his videos or a neon yellow on his main website. So it definitely is like a huge amount of contrast, but then it's interesting because otherwise he's like always wearing black and the rest of the kind of room is very dark and kind of um like not the main focus point of the interview versus like other podcasts where there's like a whole setup in the background and like a lot of bright warm colors.
Mhm.
Um and then the font is like also pretty bold and kind of confident. Um like and on his website his main font is like in the neon yellow color, so it's definitely very like kind of eye-catching, um and then in general the interviews and like that dark environment kind of make the conversation seem like serious and intense, but also you're like really focused on the interactions between them. So it's kind of like you're sitting in on the conversation, which is interesting. Um, and yeah, it kind of makes the the I don't know how to describe it, maybe like the stakes or something about the conversation really kind of intense in a way. So I don't think I would necessarily want to communicate the same like tone. I think I might want a more slightly like more warm or kind of feeling. But was I think I would take away like kind of thinking about um the the title and like how bold it appears, and that's kind of like attention grabbing. And then also having these like more muted color palette, but like some strong like accent color could be interesting. Maybe in a slightly like more warm color than his like red or neon. Um, but definitely since his podcast is called like The Diary of a CEO, he definitely overall, I feel like just glancing at his branding, it's like very confident and like powerful.
Yeah. I think also one of the things I noticed too with his is it competes with with the other the manosphere. Like he's very much like competing with, conspiracy theory content, which is very popular, unfortunately. His is more like he's actually interviewing these real people and not a conspiracy theorist, but he does use this background. He has like America falling apart in the back. Very dramatic. It really speaks to like what he's, the very big things people fear, and it really captures that well. Along with being pretty visually arresting, and it couples with what people are talking about, the audio. So
I
thank you
feel
for
like
that.
that
That
works
was,
really well, that whole fear. I mean, personally, I don't like that
yeah,
style, but and I do listen to his podcast from time to time, but it does speak to like those thoughts that you're like, oh my gosh, what if this happened? Like, what if, blank happened? And then you
right.
come across this podcast with an expert that is
He's
talking
like,
about, well, how do you prevent that? And how do you prepare for it?
or it's
That's
gonna
It really
happen.
works.
Yeah.
It really works.
It's gonna happen. Yeah, but I also appreciate that it's kind of an anecdote to those manosphere things. And the thing about like the manosphere
What is that?
and the man
Manosphere.
the manosphere is like the the Tate brothers, those very infamous like
Okay.
male toxic male culture. They really know how to do this well. They have the
I see.
I hate to give them credit for anything, they're just horrible people, but they know how to leverage branding, visual, in man on the street interviews, uh, to really package like hate and sell it. So
Mm.
very good at it.
Wait, I
Often it will
hadn't.
look like, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry, sorry. Please finish.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna comment. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the colors for the Diary CEO in relation to kind of like more crisis like narratives or like kind of
Mm-hmm.
upping that drama. So yeah, that's definitely interesting and definitely aligns with like a lot of public like discussions about various like political topics or like fears people are having. So it's a really good point.
Yeah. So I had seen him, before. He's fairly, I mean, he's obviously very well known, but didn't really know the name of his podcast, and I thought it was going to be like, a CEO, like some older person. And I just was so taken aback by how, yeah. So let me just go back here. I know we've been going strong without a break. But do folks feel pretty good just to go for a few little bit
Yeah,
more? Okay, so
that'd be
that's
fine.
great. Thanks. So, with that, once we have our brand mark, it comes with like our cover art and our episode visuals. And we've been talking a lot about it already. You saw that with, the diary of a CEO, and then Jay Shetty, and even, with Bloomberg School of Public Health, their approach to images, what is important to them, what is being centered in the brand. Is it a brand of personality like Amy Poehler or Jay Shetty, or is it about ideas, which is more about the academic setting like you get through the Bloomberg School of Public Health. So that's going to be part and parcel of the artwork throughout. And even though we're focusing on the logo and the cover art and stuff, that really will take you a long way in like creating your promotions. It's all going to thread through. And if you have all this set, you're going to have most of your promotions kind of set in terms of templating already. So so your cover is the icon, your title card is the post, and the quote is like a graphic that you can share. So it's about these three formats. And you can see here, like, whoever did this, they like, that's pretty arresting right away. You know, we're talking about people love, if you love cats, this is the type of thing that's going to grab your attention. So in terms of like cover art and the like, it has like specific rules. The 3000 square, 3000 pixels. The thing about 3000 is, no matter how, long as you keep the ratio locked, it's going to be basically the same, size, right? You can pull it out and push it back where it needs to be. And how you put your information in the square is just as meaningful as what you put in there. So you want to keep like the important stuff in the middle. So here our branded speaker is this little cat for Studio Catico. Here's our little brand. You can see here's our little brand mark, or the paws. He's a branded piece of it as well. You can very clearly see the name. We have two colors. We have our blue and our white. And then this one element is doing most of the work. And it really says like, there's a cat and he's in the studio and he's talking. You also want to make sure that this reads at different sizes. So what do I mean by that? So here it is at full size, right? Here it is a bit smaller. And you still know it's Studio Catico. Smaller again, and then down here at 100 pixels. I'm blind as anything, and I can still make out the cat and the little microphone. And having this high contrast font over this sort of darker background makes it easier to kind of read. Even if I can't really read this, which I can't, I can still, that this is doing the work for me. So we don't have time to do this right now, but when you start creating your visual, you're going to start with this kind of cover test. And you can, this was supposed to be Canva. I don't know. I just like that. You put it into Canva, and then you can kind of test out what it looks like at different sizes. And it really can also impact like what you title it, right? We go by like BCPH as opposed to the Boston Congress of Public Health, because it's going to fit a lot better onto here. If we have our Buckyball on there, people are going to be like, oh, okay, I have an idea of what this is. So just like, we don't have a lot of time to do this, but just think about like where you are in terms of, do you have your logo done? Are you still sketching things out? Do you have a blank page? It's okay. As you work through this, all our conversations today should really help you like get to where you're going. The other thing is you have access to Envato Elements, which has tons of templates on there for logo ideas. Look through and look at images that speak to like what your podcast is about. You get images, you can get ideas that way about your brand mark. You could have a conversation with AI. AI can't really create things for you because it's borrowing from other things, and it can be a little weird, but it can give you ideas. If you
What
do
is it
use
called? I'm so sorry.
What's that?
What
Envato
is it
Elements.
called?
Envato Elements, and it's
okay.
in the book,
Handbook?
right?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to put it in the chat here. It's in the handbook. If you have problems accessing it, let me know. It's like a big repository of B-roll, stock images. It has all the good stuff. And it can give you a lot of ideas when it comes to doing branding as well. So let me just show it to you really quickly. So here's Envato Elements. It has like photos. It has video templates. It has graphic templates. So you can like go in and say like brand mark. It'll give you some ideas for brand marks. You put in logo. You know, I mean, looks wild, but it'll, you know, if you want to create something where there's your logo and it helps you do a reveal, has this template for that. It'll help you like, you know, gives you a starting point as you create what you want.
And would this Envato content is something that we can actually use for ourselves, or this is just to generate the idea?
You can use it. You can, if like what you can do is you can download the template. You have access to Canva. You have access to Camtasia. If you want access to Adobe Creative Suite, I can give you access to that. It's just kind of like a larger lift. So that's why we're not gatekeeping it. It's just like most folks are a little overwhelmed by it, especially when like Canva is a little easier to use. So yeah, so those are like really good tools to get started with in terms of creating your identity. The other thing is when you're creating promotions, in addition to like just visual elements and video, is you know, thinking about your posts as cards and thinking of quote graphics, quotes from your podcasts, and video clips. So here we have just a template that we've created, you know, for square and vertical. And, you know, it just drives us forward, you know, because here's my little icon for Studio Catio. And here's the title at the bottom with Dr. Whiskers and, you know, episode 14. This is our template. All we have to do is populate it with our quote and then also with the images that we generate for it. And it really does depend on where you're pushing it out, like what you choose to use. So here, we're going to get down to some nitty gritty real quick. If folks are okay, we might go about 5 minutes over, if that's all right, because I want to get through this content. So we won't be doing this activity, but you know, do it on your own. And once we meet next week or next time, Sabath, is this okay?
If we could go through with for the next session.
Yeah, just like this like people can report back on their activity. So here we have Same Insight 5 platforms, you know, doing kind of a quote sort of post. And this is, you know, these are the different platforms you would use for that, and the ones that we recommend a lot for folks. So, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X/Blue Sky. These are very similar. Blue Sky was created because X became like a horrible place. And then TikTok is like basically YouTube Shorts and vice versa. So things that change across the different platforms. Facebook is gears older. It just does anymore. It's more warm and like stories do really well on there. Conversational for Instagram, if you're familiar with it. LinkedIn is much more like professional, or it's supposed to be. It's much more like insights, you know, what can help me get ahead in my career sort of thing. These are your briefs. These are little micro blogs, you know. And we already saw this in action when we were looking at the YouTube pages. This is like right there, hooking you in. I've got my mouth open and I'm shouting at you to get over here and start looking at it. So, you know, this is a call to like maybe start drafting up some promotions based on this exercise. So if you have time before the next session, would love to see your output. And next up is about audiograms. And Abiola, you were talking about it. Audiograms are, literally like some content pulled from a clip pulled from your work that really exemplifies an idea or something that you want to share with audiences and hook them in to come and listen to and watch the whole thing. So it's basically they call it like a highest leverage promo asset. And I want to share with you one that I created recently. And this one is very interesting because it's capturing not just the sound or the person. This actually uses like B-roll to kind of illustrate what the person is talking about. And we went through this last time. So here you have basically that thing that we saw on YouTube, this interfaith background. It's a medical school plus. Like, what? I never thought that would make a difference, when I was applying to medical school. Are they talking about being religious? Is it like something that augments? So here you don't see the speaker. You just
The way to make this even more powerful is to pull out some of the other things about you that I only found out later. So for instance, like the aspect of growing up around different types of faith, that's a very distinctive thing. Like surprisingly, medical schools are looking to diversify their student body in the smallest ways possible.
So this was like a really brief clip, 30 seconds. Very interesting, unusual take, not something that's talked about a lot about when you're applying to medical school. It may not apply to you. Maybe you're not a person that engages in any faith-based activities, but perhaps you do something else that's just very unique, but in a small way, and you still want to pull that into an interview. And you probably wouldn't have if you hadn't like watched this or watched this entire broadcast. And then this is Dr. Carpenter, by the way. So that was created with, we talked about it last time, with she would be thrilled that you liked it, through something called Opus Clip. And this actually, it has like a little free component. It takes like massive full length, podcasts, video, and we'll break it up into distinct pieces on your behalf. And we'll do that very visual thing. It'll, based on what you're talking about, it'll like suggest a headline, which you can like augment. And then it'll do those captions that are very arresting and really grab your attention. It also allows you to add in that B-roll, which, can, if someone's like watching it on, and it'll stop them from scrolling because it's like illustrating like what you're talking about. So it's just another tool there to like help you get those eyes, get those ears, and get you beyond that 10 podcast barrier. So going back really quickly, we talked a bit about like what it is, what it makes it work. This is just really that short piece that hooks people into engaging. So we saw that with what we just with Dr. Carpenter's thing. We had that hero description, that written hook in the caption, or it was like across the top. The video itself, it had her face for a little bit, but also was animated, if you will, illustrated with other content, and it had those really nice burned in closed captions, which we selected the ones that really like made you follow along with, in terms of the size of the words as it like went through to like keep the eye on the video. So these examples here are from more audiograms as opposed to like the video clip version of this, but the concepts are still the same. So here, if you only do like an audio piece, like making sure that folks know something is to be heard, like having the little waves, because if they do watch it muted, the same is true for video. having something more that speaks to like just that talking head too is really powerful. So maybe they know what something is happening. Like that was a very unusual piece about the interfaith thing when it came to like med school interviews. Seeing that might have like drawn someone's attention that they otherwise would have lost. Also being that visual piece, like look how much more powerful this is with the high contrast, the visual waveform. Imagine how much even more powerful is with video, and having this kind of highlighted in the closed caption, like in the version that I showed you. So having this templated out, having a very distinct vision for how you do your video casts and everything. We have tons of different videos for Dr. Carpenter's work. It has a very, she has different outfits on, and she's talking about different things in each one, but there's a very distinct look and feel to all of her content. The same with my own. And the same with BCPH, and the same that you're going to have with yours. So activity 3, we're not going to have time to do it, unfortunately, but is all about building your audiogram template. So in addition to activity 2, take some time this week before we meet to go through and just think about, if you don't have time to actually do this, creating, your template on how you're going to do your promotions. This is going to carry forward and with planning out your promotions, like where you push these things out, and the kind of content that's going to be powerful. So here's a sample of how to package your one piece of content in many different ways, visually, as well as the type of snippet or full piece that you might push out. Here, this marries very well to social media. And as I said, once you get your audiogram, your clip or whatever, you're going to be so set up to pushing things out over these different platforms. Now here it says 2, and this is about experimenting with like what's going to work best for your brand. In terms of the fellowship, we're going to do all of them so you can like have that experience of doing these, and you can really see what's going to stick, because for whatever reason, a lot of our content works a lot better on TikTok than it does YouTube. I never thought that would have happened in a million years, but here we are. You might find more, just because of more serious nature of some of your content, might want to work out on LinkedIn first and then push out to Blue Sky and X and Instagram. Facebook is just much more personal. It's also, I don't want to say Facebook is over, but it's a little played out. And it also, you might have to develop like, not a thick skin, but just being like, oh, okay, because it attracts a lot of trolls. So here we have information on how to actually make your posts for each of these different pieces. There are tools online that you can use where you create one piece and ask it to like regenerate it for different platforms. In general, most of the time, if you make a 1080 by 1080 block, which is just the square, and really like you had the 3000 square for your podcast block, you're going to be fine. Most platforms love it. Instagram loves it, Facebook and everything. Video is a little trickier. Some want the vertical, some want the horizontal. So just sort of walking through, the hook is very important. It's a one-line setup. Here, they want you to use more of actual content, which is different than other social media platforms. And then it's supported by your visual, by your video and everything. So here, the example we have for Studio Catio is completely written, but you can see that there's still visual cues with the writing. These aren't just bullets. You have the arrows. You have your hashtags. Normally, in terms of hashtags, you want to keep it 3 to 5. You don't want to do a whole bunch of hashtags. Back in the day, it was like more hashtags. No. And we've also gotten away from adding people, like where you do the @ sign and then write out, so you can like jump into their algorithm. It really pisses people off. So just if you do that, and sometimes you can do it with purpose, just make sure it's with purpose and not like, I'm trying to get on your algorithm. So this walks through how to make an Instagram post. Most people know how to do this, but for this, it's a little different. A lot of times people are using Reels. This has the biggest reach, obviously. People still do carousels. This is bread and butter stuff for Instagram. 8 to 10 slide sort of explainers is a lot. But if you do 4 or 5, I think that's perfectly fine. Stories are these ephemeral hooks. I personally have never gotten into those. Other people use them. But still experiment, see what works for your brand, for your audience. TikTok, again, you're going to be repurposing those audio/video clip grams. You might as well push them out on TikTok. It's kind of hard to break into the earned media referring to like, I put it out there and people grabbed it. So you're going to need to like really be conscientious about how you push it out, using, specific hashtags. You might use a weird one. Sometimes people put like FYP for the For You page. Really, TikTok does like react very well to algorithm, to like the talking head. That clip I showed you is like very TikTok-y. But it's often just luck of the draw how things work. 30 seconds, you can do a 10-minute TikTok video. I don't know if anyone has ever watched one. But yeah, so full length for your 10, your 20, your 30 minutes, that's your YouTube. And that's going to be probably where your podcast is going to live. It'll probably also live on Substack. And we'll show that more to you as well, especially as, we get toward the end. Because that's where you're probably going to want to go and have your podcast live. It's free. It creates a little home for it. And those slides are pretty much in last week's session. And I put that in the chat earlier. The other thing about YouTube is it does have a TikTok-y element called YouTube Shorts. These are videos that are less than a minute long. They work very much in the same way, just kind of like grabbing people's attention. And, that same look and feel that you saw with the YouTube videos goes true for the shorts as well, with the and the whole visual piece. X is like, fair warning. It is very no holds barred anymore. There's not a lot of like safety guards up. So if you have content that might attract like negative attention from very negative people, just ignore them, block them, and erase whatever they say. It's a good experiment just to learn how to do it. We just push things out. We don't engage on there anymore. Blue Sky is a much friendlier version. Thank God for good Blue Sky taking over for X. So public health folks migrated here because it's much safer than what it's basically Twitter. It even kind of like, that's not the official logo, but it even has like the blue and white friendly look to it, And then the Facebook family, what works on Facebook. Facebook can handle longer text like LinkedIn and Instagram. Threads is kind of a bit longer than Blue Sky and X, but it's still only 500 characters. Threads was really taking over from X for a while, but it fell out of favor. It's where our use of it is much more academic and like teaching you how to like push things out. So I don't know if you'll be using it afterward. You could, but it's not as it's not as important of a platform as it was at one point. I've also provide image specs for every platform and every format. You have it right here, just the kind of having, right at hand. And then the other thing is to make this go faster using aggregators. I don't know if you've ever used Hootsuite. Hootsuite was the kind of the original along with TweetDeck. And what these do is you can go on here, create one post, put all of your artwork in, and then hit push, and it'll just push it out for you to like all of your different platforms. It is a game changer. Same with Post Planner. Post Planner, actually, you can create, let me just show it to you really quickly. I'll just stay here and I can just. So Post Planner is an aggregator, but it's even more sophisticated. It doesn't do a lot with like post creation, but it has these things called buckets where you can create buckets for all of your different types of content. And then you can go here and have like, okay, I want to send out on an ongoing basis all of the posts that I have from my different buckets. So I don't have the buckets like specifically planned for BCPH at the moment, but I could just say, okay, at 8:30 every day, I don't know if you can see this, I'm going to have it, imagine this says instead of Q, like bucket 1 or something, all the posts that I add to bucket 1, it's just going to pull from that bucket every day at that time, pull a post and put it up. You don't care which one it does. It just goes along with that theme. It keeps your, all of your platforms like fresh and moving, but it takes out some of that hard sort of, okay, I've got to go post something. The other thing is, you are going to want to, however, not always just like rely on this. When you release a new bit of content, you're going to want to add all of your new things, get all of that set up, and have it going out at the same time as your older content so that folks are engaged and are getting eyes on you. In terms of free tiers, this is very inexpensive. You can start out at like $10 to $12 a month and move up. This used to be $5 a month. It is now, I think, like $1,500 a year. It's insane. Buffer is a newer one that has like a really great free tier. I have not used it personally, but I've heard really great things about it. It basically is like what Hootsuite used to be. So it's a great place to start. And there's a couple others like that. Substack can serve as your website, especially if you're just starting out. It has you can publish your podcast on there. You can write your newsletter and push everything out at the same time. You can meet with someone live and record and stream on Substack. You can integrate it with some of your socials. It's not as powerful with that, but it's a start. Later on, you can monetize it as well. But and then I don't know. And so this is kind of what a post of your podcast might look like on there. So yeah, SEO is very important as well. Having your stuff be searchable, crawlable, if you will. Here's some notes here about how to make things very SEO friendly and the like. So keywords and titles, doing structured show notes, having that closed captioning, RSS feed hygiene, not so much for you. Getting your index sort of transcripts out there, posting things online with really good like burned in captions. It's just goes all together to make sure that when folks look up climate change, pharmacy, you know, worker health, like your name comes up. So here, captions or content that goes along with SEO. And so here is an example going back to what Sam was talking about, that idea of the one episode generating multiple posts. So here we have that carousel, that LinkedIn carousel, having that written take. Here's our Substack newsletter, having our vertical clips on YouTube, Rails, Shorts, TikTok, the game with the audiogram, and then your graphic square. And then like really creating things to like help your guests push things out as well, giving them like a little promo pack. We do this like for one of the agencies I work for, when they do have their conference and they want people to push out content online, you give them the tools to do it. So that really speaks to that growth through collaboration. And this really talks about, what to track and what to ignore. These are just some information. There's also some tools out there like SEO Optimizer, and like there's also a YouTube Blade, I think it's called, where it just gives you statistics about, and also TikTok trends, gives you statistics about what's trending, and really gives you benchmarks against which to like judge how you're growing, evolving, what works well for your audience and what doesn't. If you like do a podcast through your Zoom, and if you're doing things live, give a poll to people who are watching, ask questions, ask a question and ask folks to, give me the answer in the comments below. That drives interaction with your pieces, as well as, gives you really valuable information. Maybe they don't like the color gold, they want you to use blue, or maybe they don't like this guest, or they might suggest someone to reach out to. And that really speaks again to that kind of parasocial relationship that you want to have with your audience, that is driving the conversation forward. That's why you're doing this work in the first place. And then, if we have more time, we would come back to this, but just think back, like, how has this piece of it changed for you as we move forward? This is just a kind of a software toolkit that you might need. Envato Elements is not on here, but certainly you have access to that. You can access Adobe Creative Suite if you need that as well. But most of these here have free tiers or are very, very low cost. And even though Hootsuite's listed, I would go with Post Planner. It's a little easier to use now. So before our next session, I know you're doing your video. Think about your cover art, your logo, your branding, your persona. How is that all interacting? You're making, instead of an audiogram or videogram, you're making your video that's introducing. Also make some of the social media that might go along with that, just to sort of test things out. And then, think through like what some of the platforms you saw today, what's resonating, look through around more to see like, what is this going to benefit you and help you grow your brand. So that was really epic. That was a lot. Thanks so much for staying. I've had my hand raised this entire time. But
That's fine. Thanks,
yeah, so I'm
Essie.
gonna stop recording. Thank you very much.